Hey, welcome to the podcast. I have Brian Casel with me. Oh my God, I literally just did it again. Brian Casel.
That's cool.
Just correct. It's been like hard coded into my brain, the wrong pronunciation for like way too long. And when we
Yeah.
actually met in Colorado that time, it was just Brian. I never,
Right. Right.
But anyways, you are a man of quite a few talents. You've got ProcessKit, you've got the audience ops, you've got your podcast, Bootstrapped Web. So, what have you been up to lately? What's kind of top of mind for you right now?
Yeah, it's always funny because like over the years I've accumulated a lot of different products and websites and things on the internet and video and like right now I'm almost exclusively focused on ProcessKit, which is a SaaS product that I've been building and rolling out to customers for the past almost 2 years now.
Yeah,
Um, I have another company, Audience Ops, which has been running for almost 6 years now. But I've got a really great team working there, and I oversee it, but I'm not involved much in the day to day there. And but it's weird because I was just thinking about this recently because like I have all these other things that I've done over the years, like the podcasts and the productized course and
how
all
long
these
has the
articles,
podcast been going
but
for,
like
by the
they
way?
just like sit out there on the internet. So like people find them now and whatever, like they're
Yeah,
asking questions about them and stuff. It's like, yeah, I haven't even like thought about that in like 4 years,
yeah. And the podcast you've had going for what, 4, 5 years at least, something like that.
Yeah, the one with Jordan. I actually have two podcasts, but the one with Jordan, um, Bootstrapped Web. I want to say we started it around 2013 or 2014. I actually started it solo, like the first 15 episodes were solo, and then Jordan
Nice.
joined me on it. And then I have another podcast called the Productized Podcast, which is more of an interview show.
It's brilliant.
Um,
Yeah, I love
it's,
that.
it's been like on and off through the
Yeah.
years.
And one of the so we're going to talk a lot about Process Kit, about how you're I think of you as the process guy. Like you are, that's what Process Kit is, but it's also just sort of who you are, thinking about how to build process around businesses. And it's interesting that with audience ops, the first thing you said, like you're like, I'm hardly involved in the day to day, which is like possibly the single biggest testimonial you could have for Process Kit, right? Because
Right.
it's one thing for a customer to say, "Oh, Process Kit's great," right? But for you yourself, as the business owner, to be like, "Yeah, I'm basically not that involved in the day to day of this other business." That's the dream. That's literally the dream. And so many people try to get there and make steps in that direction and make progress in that direction, but never really get there, never really get to like delegate all the most, annoying things or frustrating things. And so I think that's really cool.
I mean, absolutely. It's Audience Ops, which is like a productized service. We do blog content as a service. So we've got a really great team of writers and copy editors and content managers and assistants and stuff. And like um, that obviously is very, very process oriented. That's how this thing runs. I mean, I'm not trying to brag or anything here. I think it's a really
You can
good
brag a
teachable
little bit.
case.
I think I think you
I
should
use
brag a
it.
tiny bit.
No, I mean, I use it as it's my go-to case study for everything when I'm on podcasts and stuff because it's like I'm spending, I'd say less than 1 or 2 hours a week, even just touching that business at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
I do a couple of like sales calls sometimes. I also have a salesperson that helps. I've got like a team manager who oversees most of the questions, but then if things go really wrong, it comes to my inbox, and it's actually at a point now where it's like if I get an email from somebody at Audience Ops, I'm like, oh shit, what went wrong?
Yeah.
But
You spend an hour reverse engineering what the hell went wrong
yeah,
so
and
you
I
can
fold it back
like.
into the process. And the good thing now after 6 years is that like there are very few things that we have not dealt with before, and
That's
so
really cool.
it's all kind of ironed
It's
out.
Yeah, and that's the other beautiful thing about the product is it's a scratch your own itch process kit. And we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about like I peeked a little bit at your flow for your podcasts, and I was like, oh my God, like this is unreal. And those are always the best products when you're truly scratching your own itch. And it's like everybody tries to create process for their business and be disciplined about it. Like I try to do that, but I'm not as disciplined as I'd like to be about forcing myself to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just one of the unique talents that you have. And
Well, my thing is that I just get really frustrated when I have to do work that's just, why am I doing this? Why
it's
do
just
I have
anger. It's like anger-driven development.
Yeah.
It's just
Anger-driven
pure
development. I
anger.
like that. I mean, it's like, it's I over the years, this is like an ever improving thing. That you start to identify what are the things that me working on it is really valuable, and then what are the things where it's like, this is not worth my time. Somebody else should be doing this.
Yeah.
And so usually in the beginning, I do all the things, like all the little things, like my podcast. How do I want to set up every show? How do I want to plan out every interview? How do I want to invite and book guests? How do I want to do all these things? I'll do that for the first 5 or 10 episodes. But then it's like, I don't want to just have to have a repeating to do for myself. What I want to do is I just want to show up and talk to somebody on the microphone for an hour, because that's the value. We're creating content, right? Or, whatever it may be. And then all the little other pieces, I've got an editor, I've got a producer who handles that stuff, and they just follow a process.
Mm-hmm.
And then, guests get booked and I show up and we do calls, and
Yeah.
podcast gets published.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so, my audience for the podcast, a lot of developers, it's a lot of software development agencies, e-commerce, more so on the agency side of things than on the e-commerce merchants, but a little bit of that too. And those are probably two very different use cases. But so and you've been putting out some really great content specific to services companies and stuff like that, which will get linked up and stuff like that. But for, let's say, like a development agency, I don't know, a typical development agency with, let's say, 10 people or whatever numbers, whatever, rough picture you want to paint, what are some things that they could put in place to further like I am always thinking about how agencies in particular can further productize, because that's also kind of how my brain works. I'm just not as, like, I've been able to productize some things for my businesses, but then you've taken it a step further of being so relentless about it that you create a framework and a product that can even live on its own. But like, I'm always thinking about, like, hey, as an agency, do retainer work, like productize it, like package things up. I was talking to somebody just yesterday about, taking consulting work and packaging it up. And it's always, you lose a little bit of the attention you can give to something that's fully custom. So it's sort of just a matter of choosing those trade-offs in a way. But like, I don't know, what are some of the things that...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think on that point, and I for years, and especially now with ProcessKit, I talk to agencies all the time, and my thinking on it has always been, it's, if you're a small shop, like a consultancy, a solo consultant, maybe a couple of people, or even if you're an agency, like, you could go the totally custom route, which means fewer engagements, larger engagements, but everyone is completely different from the next. That's one way to go. You could grow a lot of revenue that way, but everyone knows it's like that. It's like, I hope we land 2 big clients for the next 2 quarters. Otherwise, this whole year might be shot. Like, we don't know. And then you got to sort of, like, you got to go through the whole proposal process and negotiate and go back and forth, and then you got scope creep, and then you've got all these estimates and all that kind of stuff.
And these are all things that drain people's energy. Like, nobody likes to do a proposal.
Yeah.
Like, almost universally. Like,
yeah.
Nobody wants to
do it. And then also, like, the project management of that stuff too. Like, so you're executing these big custom projects. So much energy goes into all the individual players just individually trying to figure out, all right, who needs to be doing what? Who are they on time? Are they delivering what they need to do? Are they working on the right things? We don't know. Oh, we gotta move that around. Oh, we've got a fire over here. There's all these little, like, management, layers that's taking your focus and energy away from creating really great work.
Yeah.
Right. So you look at the other side, and what a lot of agencies have started to figure out is, if we could make everything standardized, if we could start to make every project look very similar to one another, it's never going to be perfectly exactly the same every time, but if you can get them more similar to one another, even if they're big, higher price point projects, if you can make them consistent, then you can make them more repeatable. And that usually means not only are the projects themselves the same, but in order to do that, you start to need to focus on selling to the same type of person, and then the same type of company, and then you can actually start to do real marketing to find more of that type of person, right?
Yeah.
But then on the delivery side, you're starting to do more repeatable work, which means you know exactly who you need on your team to deliver which roles, because those roles are consistent. You know, we need a designer, we need a developer, we need a copy editor.
Right.
And then it's like, the more consistent their work becomes, the more that those people are freed up to focus on what they're most talented at.
Yeah.
The design, the code, the words, right? You know, and it just removes that whole management layer. And then, you know, then you get into actually figuring out your process for doing that, documenting it, making sure everyone's on the same page.
Right.
It does lower costs. It makes it more profitable.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, it might be, you know, instead of like the huge, massive budget custom projects, you might dial it down in terms of revenue, but your costs become so much more predictable and sustainable, and you don't need to, you know, hire all these like, you know, different players.
I just had a wild idea, which is like, you know, a lot of founders follow a trajectory where they sort of become investors at some point, and I'm sure you're going to, like, if you're not already, you're going to be there soon. And I was just imagining, if you were to take an agency that you know has potential to productize heavily, and then you like worked with them as like an investor mentor to productize and then market. It's totally random segue, but I like that would be fascinating.
Yeah, you know? I mean, there's people who do that.
Create a rolling fund of productized agencies.
Yeah. There are definitely consultants who just focus on processes and
but not just as a consultant. That's what would be so powerful about it, is like so many people could consult on that, but like you could take a company in 10x, 20, 30x, you know, like, I don't know. It's just a random thought, but
I like making software these days. That's literally what I love spending my time on right now.
That's so cool.
And designing products. That's what I do. I mean, like you talked about the process stuff, and yeah, that's how I've built businesses, but I'm a designer by trade.
Got it.
I that's my background. So
that's so cool. Like, it's almost like the process stuff, you just have done it out of a sense of discipline of, I got to get this stuff out of my way so I can focus on the stuff that I love. And that's funny because I always think of you as loving the process, but it's almost two sides of the same coin. Like, I'm sure you love
the way that I look at it. Yeah, it's I find it interesting to build processes and service companies that can grow on their own. But the reason why I've gone into software is because that was my sort of first love, and I've always been creating things on the web, and with audience ops for the first time, you know, because I've gone from like being a freelance web designer to Restaurant Engine, bootstrapped and sold that a few years back.
Right.
Then I started audience ops, but audience ops is the first one that grew to a point where you know, like 2 or 3 years into audience ops, I was starting to be a lot more freed up from the day to day. And so now it's literally a business that pays my bills here. It still does. But it frees me up to focus on the next thing. And I actually took all that time, and like the year of 2018, I basically invested that entire year, my full-time hours, into learning to build in Ruby on Rails. You know,
right.
I was always a front end guy, HTML, CSS, some WordPress and stuff like that. But like, I could never actually build an app myself, and that always frustrated me. But then I was like, well, I've got a lot of free time, and I'm frustrated with outsourcing development. Let me just, you know, invest in myself for that year, and then then 2019 and 2020, I've been building ProcessKit and rolling it out. But like the great thing about having a business that can run is that I don't have investors. I'm fully bootstrapped. But and it's self-funded, but it's not like I'm just burning through my savings. It's just a sustainable runway.
Totally.
And I'm super impatient.
The
like I want to
bootstrap
move
dream. The bootstrap dream.
See, that's the thing is that it's like I'm super impatient, so I'm always like I want to move as fast as possible and ship features and get customers. But it took like 10 years to get here, but it's like finally I have this like space to breathe and be strategic and take time and build software and I don't have to be like urgent, like whatever it takes to just pay the bills this month,
I feel like that's such a, and I'm in a very similar position, and I can do things like not take phone calls or things that I don't like to do. I still need to work, but there's a level of flexibility and stuff, and like my business being productized. And I just sort of think that way a lot, right? And I think that so many, let's say agencies, but business owners in general, but particularly agencies, when you talk about like urgency, right? Like it's almost like they are driven by that urgency, and it's so hard to take a step back.
Super hard, man. I've been there so many times, in over the years where it's like, I really think of it like it's like driving drunk,
right. It totally is.
Like you're running your business.
It totally is.
And like you're like money's just a little bit tight this month, and then you're just gonna take that client who is a bad client, but right. they've got the budget, and
you're gonna make a bad choice because
you're gonna make a bad choice. Making bad decisions. There's gonna be all sorts of fallout.
Yeah. That's such a great analogy, man. And then you're gonna crash. Like at some point, like every agency owner has crashed on some level, And I'm not laughing about it in the sense, like I have a lot of empathy. Like I think of a friend that, I think of people that have had burnout. I've personally experienced burnout and depression on some level, whether I don't know if it's diagnosed or not. So it's one of those things that it's funny, but it's also funny because we've experienced firsthand some of that pain, whether it's as a business owner, agency owner, whatever. And it's kind of hilarious, but it really sucks. Like it's really, when you're in the midst of that.
And it's not just like totally, and it happens to everyone. And you think in the moment that you're clear-headed and that you're making smart decisions, but like, I mean, I'm speaking for myself here.
Yeah.
There have been times where just money was a little bit tighter or it took a weird turn. And then I just, all of a sudden I try to like launch some new business that it's like whether it's like taking on a bad client or going after a shiny object product idea just to try to, make something happen. The shiny object
thing is a really interesting topic. I think both you and I have done a number of things, maybe more things on average than, let's say, a successful bootstrapper who's reached, let's say, 6 figures as a rough number, right? And a lot of times it's so important to keep that focus. And it's like, but then also like you also want to try new things, right? Like you went from audience ops to ProcessKit, 2 podcasts, not 1 right? Like you're doing things, and it's like, it's not always obvious what's a shiny object and what isn't. And sometimes it's extremely obvious, like particularly maybe if you're seeing into somebody else's life more objectively. But that's a tough thing to figure out.
It's really, really tough, man. It's I think about it all the time. And the other tough thing, I think this is the same for you, right? You're a solo founder. You've been solo me too. And when you don't have business partners, it's one thing to have employees, but it's completely different to have like equal footing partners. Invested in your business.
So I have
so like when you're solo.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I have a partner in Commerce Hero, but it's more like I guess more like a passive investor kind of a thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So all the decisions I make, basically all the decisions 100%, but he's a great guy and we have some great collaboration. But so it's a little bit of a weird both and.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but I totally understand where you're
I mean,
going with
like,
this.
and I've sort of uh, compensated for that by having really great advisors and friends that I talk to on a routine basis, other business owners, um, and we talk now. We talk over Zoom a lot, but we did the Colorado trip and Vermont trip and stuff like that, you know. So I really rely on groups like that, small groups of friends that we've known each other for years. We know each other's businesses really well, and so we can give each other that like critical advice and feedback and gut check.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's so hard. You know, about the shiny object thing. The thing that always I think has made it difficult for me. And I'm trying to avoid this now. I'm so focused on ProcessKit, but in the years I've been like, I've had a lot of things that did okay, that like didn't fully fail. I wish they would just completely flop, because then it would just be like so obvious, like, all right, don't do that. but they did just enough revenue or just enough income to make it like, all right, well, maybe it's stupid not to focus on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And, and
Yeah.
it's like, but it's not a raging success.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, it's really actually a distraction.
Yeah. And then like the deeper thing, like I loved how you said, look, I'm a designer. I love building stuff, right? And a lot of times founders go the opposite direction, right? When their business gets to the point where they have a choice, they want to do less coding. And I've found a similar thing personally. Like I do maybe an hour and a half of coding every day. And so on the one hand, it's kind of a very small amount. But I find that I'm able to make really good progress and consistent progress. And I really love that. Like I just, it's like I have my morning routine. I also like we got to do a whole episode on routines. Like I saw your tweet on your morning walk strategic. Like we got to do routines. We got like 7 different episodes. But yeah, like I have my morning routine. I love doing coding. I love a lot of aspects of social media and connecting, networking. But yeah, finding.
I think you're a lot better with that stuff, like than I am with the social and video stuff and podcasts. Even like I podcast, but I get burnt out on that. Like
Yeah.
you know.
I've gone through spurts, and I'm in this spurt now where I'm really liking it, and I'm kind of broadening out and really being energized from it. But I've had so many spurts where I'll do a bunch of content and then I'll get burned out and then I'll stop. And then I've had our main podcast with my buddy's been consistent over the years. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know, like finding that thing that really drives you and energizes you is sometimes very hard to get to, right? Like it takes, like I'm 39, right? Like it took 37, 38 years to get there. Like you said, it took you the 10 years to get to the point where you had some breathing room and then you could sort of,
I mean, yeah, more than that, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and yeah, like I really enjoy it. I'm in the code. I am working with another developer, and that's been really enjoyable this year too. Like I've outsourced to developers for many years, but this is the first time where like I built most of the product, and
Totally
now I
different.
brought in a second-hand guy, like a right-hand guy to work with me directly day to day. Of course, he's in India, and we're doing it like across the world and everything. But like, we're just cranking on features every single week, and it's just so much fun. Like I'm having so much more. I used to just design the software and then throw it over the fence to the developers, and now it's like I could actually design it from the inside out,
Right.
and then work with a developer who is much better at me than at the back end stuff.
right.
But I understand it, and we can collaborate on it.
And then it sounds like you're learning like techniques, development techniques and things like that from them. And at the same
Totally.
time, they're getting work done for you. So it's like, sounds like it's a very, what's the word? Not the opposite of vicious cycle, harmonious cycle.
It is harmonious. I mean, you know what's
virtuous cycle.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned like I'm just an impatient person. Like I want things to move very fast, especially when it comes to like feature development and software. So, everyone talks about like, oh, we've got this big feature. It's going to take us months to build it and ship it, or this big product is going to take years to build. And what I love about working with another developer now is that I can be like a really, really fast client for him. You know what I mean? Like I'll give him really, really detailed specs, and then I review his work like within hours, and we're going back and forth like super quick. Whereas most dev agencies who work with clients, they've got like how many full days or weeks of an engagement are really just spent like waiting for them to give you feedback.
There's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of like low bandwidth communication and
or like a committee has to review stuff or like whatever it is, and it's like that's why these seemingly small features are taking 8 months to ship.
Yeah.
Like it's not a massive user base right now. I know that adds time to it, but like
right.
We're shipping like pretty complex features in like under a month each.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about, and I don't know if we want to jump in and maybe, try switching to a little bit of a screen share or something, looking at some of the features. I know that we were looking at that. Yeah, so why don't we see if we can do it here on the fly? I'm recording in Ecamm, so if you switch, I'm hoping that it will just switch your
just share my screen?
Yeah, I think if you share your screen, kind of hoping it'll just pull that in magically. And then I guess if it doesn't, we can just talk through it.
Start sharing. So I guess that's my whole screen, right?
Okay, so I'm seeing the Skype logo, and it's probably gonna. Oh wait, here we go. Shared screen. Perfect. That's the whole screen. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like just my browser?
Not just the browser, no, it's the whole desktop.
Okay.
With the Catalina. I got that same background.
You know what I actually do? I was going to do it for this. Are you able to see this now?
Yep. So now that looks like it's black background and it's just the browser.
So I switched to this for when I do demos.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
The other thing that I do for demos, I didn't do it now, is I'll change the screen resolution. Should I do that, you think?
That might not be a bad idea. Yeah.
Make it a little bit bigger.
You sound like a guy who has thought through the process of doing demos a time or two.
I'm a guy who's been doing 2 or 3 demos a day for the past year. So
Nice.
So that should be a little bit bigger. All right. Well, I can just go through my typical like demo spiel here, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and then I'll try not to interrupt too annoyingly, but I'll just pop in with questions and stuff like that.
All right. So yeah, I'll give you like a little bit of a taste of what ProcessKit can do. Obviously, we're not going to look at everything, but so what I'm looking at here, it's a demo account. You might consider this to be like an agency. And we're looking at what we call boards. Every board, if you're familiar with a Trello board, it's a similar concept. A single board is where it contains all of the projects that share commonality. So I created a board here called New Client Onboarding. Right? If I click into that, it's a Kanban view, similar to Trello, and we can move them around manually. But the Kanban can actually also automate. You can automatically move things around as people check off tasks. We'll get into that in a minute. But just here on this view, we're looking at the new client onboarding board. Here we call projects onboarding or onboardings. And if I back out again to marketing campaigns board, which I called it a marketing campaigns board, and here we're calling a project a campaign.
Right.
So it's very context aware.
Right.
And you can customize every board, the lists, and all that. The other thing that you'll notice is that the projects or these cards can be associated with clients. So it's not like a typical project management tool where you have to like make a project a client and kind of do these weird things. Here we actually have clients. You can keep your client list
Right.
and associate things.
Like you have like
But
first class data models for the types of things that you need for clients and things. Like you're not
yep.
trying to shoehorn sort of your business model into Trello and like it's like it's purpose built for these types of things.
Yeah, exactly. So I went back into my new client onboarding board, and let's go ahead and create a new one of these, right? So let's do like onboarding, of a new client. I can create that. Before I do that, let's just look at more settings. I could associate this project with a client. Let's associate it with Dunder Mifflin here. We could make this a recurring project. We're not going to do that right now, but that option is there. Let's go ahead and create this. And so this right here is where sort of the magic happens. Is like we just created a new project and it automatically built out this project with a set of tasks that my team can just start to knock off. The right people have been automatically assigned to each task. We can open up the tasks and they already contain all the instructions, copied over from our processes. These can be, text, images. We could also even have input fields for the team to fill in as they go through the work.
And then the magic thing here is that all of those tasks, they have the individual instance on the individual instance of this client, but then you can update them in one place. So if you want to change your getting started form, you change it in one place.
I'll show you that in a minute. Before we get into that, like we're in an instance,
right?
This one project, right? And you could even like throw in like a special to do. You're not messing with your template process or anything. Right. It's just for this project. You could do that.
Right.
But these dates have been automatically calculated. So we've got like dynamic dates that are built in. You've got automations. So like show or hide this task if certain conditions are true. You've got dependencies, automated actions that can happen when somebody checks this off.
There's those complex features you were talking about knocking out.
Yeah, exactly. So if I go back, like you were just saying, if I go back into my processes, now we're looking at those template processes, right? So we could look at that new client onboarding process, and here we're working in just the template. And you can open up any of these tasks and make some edits to it. Excuse me. Maybe add some new steps in between, change some of the automations up a little bit. And now we've got all these active projects. So we want to make sure that those get up to date. We could propagate this process out. It's telling me that I have 7 active projects currently that are running with copies of this process. So I can just click this button,
right,
and all my changes will get pushed out to all those projects. And it's not going to wipe out like our progress that we've made on checking off tasks or anything. It's just updates the content of the project.
Right.
So that's how like your agency or your team can just continuously update and improve your processes over time. You can even fold your changes back in. So like if you're in a project, you could turn a new task list into a process that you could reuse. So.
That's the magic right there, because literally every company has some sort of documentation for what they're trying to do, and people are starting to get better at that, but it's all hopelessly out of date. And the reason it's out of date is because of exactly this problem. You get into the weeds with a specific thing, and then you don't want to update it in 2 places. Now you've got things in multiple places, so it's just
and like what you're saying is that like the reason why so many companies have a hard time actually documenting their processes and going through that work of becoming process oriented is because they try documenting, but then they just live over in Google Docs somewhere,
right?
Or some other tool. They're separate from the place where you're actually doing the work and your team is doing tasks.
Exactly.
And so here, like really, what we want to do is turn our processes into task lists.
Yep.
For your team. And when you do that, not only are you like it's streamlining because you can just, run a new client onboarding or run a new marketing campaign off of your process. But then it opens the door to all these automations, so if we looked at clients now, we've got a list of clients in ProcessKit. I can go into one of them. A client has all these custom attributes. These are custom fields that we set up for this account. We can give their contact info, their service plan and stuff.
Yeah.
And so when all this is integrated, you can integrate this into your processes. So if you're doing a marketing campaign and you're doing it for Dunder Mifflin, if Dunder Mifflin is on the gold package, then show these tasks, but don't show those other tasks. The process can adapt to each individual case.
Right. So cool, man. I think that there's so much that agencies can learn from this kind of a model. I'm curious, like we talked a little earlier about like a consultant that might help a company kind of figure things out. And I'd imagine a lot of your customers kind of get in here and, through, support that you offer, they kind of are able to figure it out. Do you find that, are there consultants that are kind of familiar with your product that can kind of help really, really, really dive in deep with the company to help them get a good process in place and things like that? Or do they mostly just
so there, first of all, like I do offer a implementation and consulting service with ProcessKit.
Perfect.
So I work with new customers every day on helping them set up their processes, and also
Nice.
We've got a really great Zapier integration, so I help them like connect and integrate anything else that they need.
That's awesome.
There are people who are really good at that too, and they know ProcessKit really well. We've got a good affiliate program as well, so
Nice.
some people take advantage of that. But the other cool thing for like consultants or people who move this screen out of the way here. We have basically templates. We call them kits, and these are like ready-made process templates and boards and configurations that are all set up, and you can just one click import our templates into your account, or say you're a consultant, or you're say you have a course, or you do some training with companies. You could create your own processes and create and export your own kit from ProcessKit. So then you can work with clients and then import your kit into your clients' accounts.
I love it. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, the integrations thing, I know your audience are developers. I mean, that's a big one. Like we've got a really solid Zapier integration, but the other thing that we have are webhooks, so that when you check off a task, you can actually let me uncheck that one. You can fire off a webhook to an address anytime a task is completed, and that'll pull out like all the data from the project, all the custom fields,
Nice.
and send it wherever you need.
Nice. I kind of had some questions kind of transitioning back to a higher level conversation, but if there's anything else you wanted to kind of
No,
demo.
yeah. I mean, I know this wasn't supposed to be like a demo of ProcessKit, so yeah, let's just.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we got some of that in because I wanted to get in and see the product and stuff like that. But like, so I guess what I'm wondering is like from a.
Stop sharing.
Oh yeah, let's see if we can figure that out. I might have to. Oh, cool. Yeah, and then let me just change this back. Okay, cool. So like on a high level, like as a development agency, and maybe as a high level, and then maybe jumping into some of the specific features and things like that. What are some of the things that an agency? What are some of the? What's some of the low hanging fruit? Some of the medium hanging fruit that they can get to? Like we've talked about, sales is tricky. Proposals, right? There's also software for generating proposals and stuff like that. And then there's your project management. Like there's so many different things that you can automate and productize and create process around. What do you find are some of the easier wins for people that are kind of just starting to do this?
Yeah, I think that the biggest one, and I see it with almost every new customer on ProcessKit, is tackling the new client onboarding experience with your agency. So that usually starts from the point where they purchased or signed the contract or accepted the proposal. And from that point forward, it depends what type of agency you are, but a lot of agencies need to immediately gather a lot of materials from the client. So you can have this, big client intake form, which, can be powered from ProcessKit or any other form that you're using. And so you want to gather materials. You want that to come into your process or tasks tool and then kick off a process. But also what happens during onboarding is usually some calls. So they might need to book a kickoff call or a discovery call or something like that. That booking should happen within a period of time. And when they book, it should trigger, okay, the call has been booked and now these follow-up tasks have been lined up.
Right.
All of that can be sort of automated and streamlined using ProcessKit. But the reason why that's so important is, and I've found this with audience ops, I mean, it literally made a huge difference in the customer lifetime value when we overhauled our customer onboarding experience back in somewhere around 2017. If you make the first month experience just knock it out of the park,
totally,
like their expectations are set week after week, you're delivering on time, you're going above and beyond with communication, early wins. You're delivering your thing within 30 days, and that's just the beginning of a larger thing. Then they're like, it's like a number of things happen. The customer, they've just paid a lot of money to get started with you, right? So it sort of validates their decision. They're like, yes, I was unsure if this would be risky hiring this firm, but now I'm validated. This was the right choice. This has been an awesome experience. I'm so smart for hiring this firm,
totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they go out and rave about you on Twitter, and LinkedIn, and where else, and you're only 30 days in, and then it's like a sort of like a referral engine,
right?
And then it's like the other thing that I noticed is sometimes it's out of your control. Things are just kind of bumpy in the first couple of weeks, right? Or things go wrong or whatever it may be, but if you managed expectations perfectly week after week, that's literally the difference between a new client who they're not thrilled because things are going bumpy, but they're going to work with you to make it right.
They're going to work with you versus
they're going to work with you on it
versus
if they make one more mistake, we're done.
Yeah.
And
then you've got the exact opposite of that referral engine, which is they're not happy with you. They're letting people know they weren't thrilled and things like that.
Right.
And it's in some ways it's like a delicate time where you have the best of intentions as an agency. You're confident in the talent that you've built up in your agency. But things can happen in that first period of time. And so that just seems like a really smart thing to optimize.
I mean, we've had clients in audience ops that started with us 4 or 5 years ago, and I really remember burned into my memory these first 2 months that were kind of bumpy.
Yeah.
And I thought at the time, I was like, all right, well, this is shot. And they're still subscribed today. And because we made it past that, and then it's all smooth sailing from there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned the phrase referral engine, and another piece of process that I always think I should do more of, but I don't, is asking for those referrals at some stage in the relationship. Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things that you want to do it at the right time. And that time is sometimes variable. Sometimes it's the first month, but maybe it's 3 months, depending on when's the right time to ask. But that's one of those things that you're just leaving money on the table because you're not asking. And if they've had a good experience, they're happy to give you a referral. And then you just have, so that's something that I should add to my process. Totally.
I mean, we do have it in our sales process with audience ops.
Nice.
It happens around 30 or 40 days in. And by that point, we've delivered the first piece of content, and we get a report internally from the manager to see were things successful during that first month. And then if they are, then the salesperson, reaches out and asks for a referral. And I mean, I'm the salesperson a lot of the times, and I get lazy and I don't do it.
Okay.
But it is part of our process,
So and to drill into this a little bit, because I'm curious about some of the mechanics of how this works. So it basically, there's a field somewhere where somebody can say if the customer is satisfied, and then that sort of kicks a notification to the sales guy, who then just manually like there isn't a field in the system where they check that they asked for the referral. It's just like
no,
an
we
email.
do have a field.
Okay.
Like we have it. It's like literally part of the process.
But so you just don't ask for the referral and you click and say I'll just skip or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
I own the business. No one's gonna get mad at me if I don't do
no one's gonna get mad at you. Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. Yeah.
Right. So with every client account, has an account manager, right? So internally, that's their like point of contact who communicates with the client week to week.
Yeah.
And at the end of our onboarding process, which takes about 35 days to get them fully onboarded, like the last step of that is the manager internally in ProcessKit, like writes answers 4 questions, like how did things go with this client? Were there any unforeseen delays? What's the other one? Like how is this client to work with? Like, is it a good personality fit for us? And then I think the last one is like we link to our recent conversations. We do all of our email in Help Scout, like a shared inbox for the team.
Mm-hmm.
So we link that. So then we just have, like, I see those reports for every new client. And I don't do much, but it's good to have that record. That's the other thing about doing all this is like, you have a snapshot in time so that, say 2 months down the road, something goes wrong. Now we can do an audit of all the weeks that led up to that and see, okay, we had this report on this date, then this was checked off. Oh, it looks like this was not checked off. And like, now you can start to diagnose the history. Whereas, instead of just reacting to everything.
It's brilliant, man. I love it. I need somebody to slap me around every week or so until I start using more of this myself. A lot of useful stuff in there.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. This was a lot of fun getting a chance to chat, and I think I have about 5 other follow-up episode ideas that we can try to get going at some point.
I could ramble about product stuff and process software all day long. So anytime.
I love it. Awesome, man. Well, how can obviously we've looked a little bit at the product and things like that. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so the social media wise, Twitter is basically the place where I hang out. So CastJam on Twitter. And,
great Twitter handle, by the way.
That is my AIM screen name from when I was like 12 years old, and it became my Twitter handle when I'm 38 years old.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, awesome, man. Well, thanks. Everybody check out Brian on Twitter and whatnot, and thanks for tuning in. We will see you soon.
Thanks.